welcome to We're Not Wizards. We are the best, but not wizards. Enjoy the show!
Hunting haggis round the hills. I went on a foraging and I collected various kind of black currants and grapefruit and lychee and made myself a kind of a cordial, which you see in front of you. Obviously, with the drops of blood from the English, pretty much, because that's not true at all. So, okay. So let's have a, remember you said yes. You said yes. This is anybody that does this, because
I listened to them before I come on anything, so I knew what this was.
You'd be amazed at the number of people that don't, and then go, you got a list of questions for me, and it's like, this is not how this works. The thing was, right, if William had been on, or do I call you Stephen or do you call you Skippy?
I go by Skippy for my game-related stuff, yeah.
Do you?
Yeah. Well, Stephen Brown is far too common of a name, right? Like that's not going to stick. And you had him on, Johnny Pack. I learned from him. His name's not Johnny Pack, but
no, Johnny Pack Canteen.
Yeah, but Johnny Pack sticks in your brain, right? It's
Johnny Pack does stick in your brain.
And that's what he puts on the boxes, right? He has Johnny Pack on the boxes. So I'm just copying him.
Yeah.
Not as well, but
I think it's fine. So Skippy Brown.
Yeah.
See, that sounds like a kind of one of those craft beers that you get. The ones that they say it's like fermented in a badger sock, and then they kind of reverse distillate it. And then it's left in a cask of despair.
See, I would
before
just,
it's let out free, kind of thing.
I would just imagine it's one that they had peanut butter to.
Peanut butter is slowly becoming my food of choice. It's just becoming, and it's not peanut butter by itself, because you're right. It's like it reminds me of one of the ridiculous jokes in the world, which is what's the difference between peanut butter and an elephant? And it's like, well, an elephant doesn't stick to the roof of your mouth when you eat it.
I don't know that to be true. I mean, they could.
There is potentially, if you're trying to eat an elephant, I suppose that's the whole thing. How do you eat an elephant a bit at a time, I guess. But there used to be a whole host. This is back in the day where jokes didn't have to be kind of edgy or controversial. It's like, how do you tell an elephant sleeping next to you in your bed? Because there's a big E embroidered in its pajamas. How do you tell an elephant's been hiding in your fridge? There's footprints in the butter. And that was also back in the day where you had butter on a tray.
I mean, we call those dad jokes out here, right?
They are. They're absolutely. I am thoroughly into kind of like dad joke worlds kind of thing. So,
yeah, I'm there too.
I had almost considered if your brother had been on, because I know he's a bit of an actor.
He is much more quick-witted than I, so it would have been a disaster for me to have him on, because he can improv, he's quick-witted, he's funny. Like when I play D&D with him, like I'm the boring guy who just rolls dice, and he's the one who comes up with the funny stuff, and it's fast and it's paced, and he's the one everyone remembers. I'm just the guy sitting next to him.
How many games has he designed though?
I think zero. No.
Zero. How many games have you designed, Steve?
Designed? Well,
yeah, I'm be involved.
I got 7 designed, but only 1 signed.
See, so. I mean, that's 1-0. I mean, it's all very well going. I am Thosius of Escobato, and I am part mage and part imp, and I do magic spells, and it's like, that's amazing. How many games have you had signed?
Of course,
and he's like, none.
He can come back with, how many of us have channels with over like 5,000 subscribers? And I'll be like, okay, you win.
Yeah, but I mean, a guy that puts up tents for a living. You never seen this? There's a guy that's on YouTube, right? And what he does is he just puts up tents. He gets sent tents, right? Right. He gets sent tents, different types of tents every week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And he makes board gaming look like one of these part-time hobbies because he's got about 20 million subscribers, and every single channel he has, he's kind of like got, every single video he puts out, he gets about 17,100 million views on it. And it's just him going, and today, this week, I've been given the Forest Master 3000, and we're just going to pitch this tent. And that's what he does, and he pitches the tent and shows people how to pitch it, and then he gets millions upon millions of views. So,
I mean, there's a person who just dissects candy bars.
Yeah.
On the internet. He has millions, or she. They don't ever show their face. They just show them dissecting candy bars. That's all they do.
It's just and then you think about all these want somebody think of the board game media people, with their, spending hours learning, filming, playing games, giving an opinion, and they're getting they're putting a video out and they get 20 views.
Yeah.
And that must be kind of like a soul destroyer. Let's start a show. I think we've warmed up. Thespian warm up. Do you know what? The worst thing was, the best thing was, I was going to start with a song because I think being this early, what time is it just now for you, Skip?
It's almost noon.
Almost noon.
It's almost noon.
On a Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm interrupting you from having a lie-in.
Well, I'm the one who made you not do it on a weeknight. So, right? So you're giving up a weekend evening.
Yeah,
so I appreciate that.
I know. We're too far in to do an introduction now, but we're just going to kind of do an introduction. Hello and welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for the disaster that is the middle of August. Because I'm telling you, I'm considering building an ark. The amount of rain that's happening at the moment is just absolutely dreadful. But, we shall prevail. I managed to walk the dog earlier on. I managed to walk the dog in this half-hour slot where there wasn't any rain at all. I don't know if it's got something to do with the tides. I don't know if it's got something to do with kind of I don't know, the moon. Because at the moment I'm having to travel. I'm having to go quick. You could almost say I'm in a bit of a lunar rush. Now, sometimes you walk in, I feel cold, I feel warm, I feel hot. The weather's just changing all the time. Sometimes I feel dead, sometimes I feel alive. I can't have it both ways or two ways. So there's the only thing. But then again, I'm okay with it, or I'm excited with it. I don't know. I feel quite jumpy. I feel even a little bit skippy. So,
way to tie
there's
it
only
all
one
together.
thing to do when you're in that situation. Don't interrupt me. I'm like Eminem. I'm in mid-flow. I'll take you down. I want to talk about Lunar Rush from Dead Alive Games. There's only one person who I am going to speak to about that. That is the wonderful, fantastic Skippy Brown. Hello, Mr.
Hello.
Brown. How are you doing, first of all? You well?
I'm doing well.
Good.
I'm really excited. I just found out the mass number of copies made it on the ship, and so they're en route to the United States. So that's really good news.
That is kind of what it's the little wins. I don't think I don't know if anybody's ever done a kind of like a board game about logistics, shipping of board games. Because that in itself seems to be like some kind of game in itself, basically, as in kind of getting the stuff, and then it's like, you win victory points. Why do I win victory points? Well, because your game's got on the boat.
which you don't know until after the boat's left, right? Like, they don't let you know, right? It's because they don't want you complaining before it leaves that you're not making it on the boat. I don't get it. I'm glad I don't have to get it, but it just sounds miserable. Like, every week you're waiting to see if you're on the boat.
Are you on it? Is it like a case of, is getting on the boat like the ultimate Tetris puzzle, that they have all the different kind of containers and crates, and then depending on who's in the queue, they decide to slot you in to the next boat. Because we've all seen I think we've all seen the pictures of the big boats, and they just look like huge, amazing kind of puzzles. And you got to wonder, you always see people saying, third one in, 7th row down. That's my one there. I can recognise the kind of container. Is it still been as much of a logistical issue kind of getting stuff kind of out of China, or has it kind of calmed down? I mean, where are you in terms of, because where are you in terms of kind of being on time or being behind? Are you a usual Kickstarter guy? You about 6 months behind? Or
well, all this I have to give full credit to Bernie and Brendan, Dead Alive Games, right? They've done all this stuff, but they had said our original goal was November, and so they may still beat it. And the ones who picked up they actually were also at Gen Con were giving out to any backers who showed up. They give them all their stuff they could. So some backers already have it. So that's incredible. So they're going to make November. They're going to make the deadline. Can you believe it?
You better run about and touch some wood. You got to touch wood here.
Yeah.
Skippy, gotta be.
Yeah. They're going to make it.
It's going to be fine.
They're going to make it, which is just spectacular. I mean, that's what's great about working with them is they do the things the right way. They picked a deadline they could make. They made a deadline, right? They flew a few copies out for Gen Con, but any backer who walked up could have it. They could walk away with it, which is what it should be, but that's not what it always is.
Yeah. I think more often than not, when it comes to Kickstarter, what you hear, unfortunately, is tales of the retail editions have been produced quicker or are easier to ship out than the Kickstarter exclusive editions. And so you get people kind of going, oh yeah, I know we've not had an update, but I just went along to I went along to your stand and I noticed that you're selling kind of retail editions of a game that I backed and allowed you to print. And you sometimes hear that a time. And it's like, yeah, I mean, there's part of me that goes, yeah, that must be terrible. But there's also part of me that's saying, well, you're kind of helping, you kind of help fund the idea. And part of that is also kind of, the business can't kind of hold up on something like Gen Con, which is a huge, massive selling opportunity, and say, we're just going to kind of hang back, especially when there seems to be so many costly little things that can kind of happen when it comes to kind of games production. So have you been kept quite involved in the kind of the process through the kind of the Kickstarter? Have you been able to kind of have you had regular meetings or regular comms from the guys about kind of progress where things kind of are?
I would say more than most designers. Now, I'm more interested because it's the only game I have signed. It's the only game I have coming out. Right. Yeah. So it can take more of my focus, but it's also me learning more about the steps and everything they got to go through, which can only help me do better for someone else later. Right. As I understand more what the other half has to do, right, I can be better prepared for that. So I've been, I'll say, more involved than I think most designers are, but also, right, it's my only baby. So I am more involved.
Yeah. I mean, Lunar Rush at a rat. Let me it came in with just over $33,000, and it's being, as you say, it's in the process of kind of getting fulfilled. But if we jump back, way back, how long had you been? You say you've got a couple of designs. So how long had Lunar Rush been sitting there before it was actually signed by Dead Alive Games?
So Lunar Rush was signed, I'll say, fairly quickly. I had started pitching it to a couple of companies, and got turned down. And Bernie was one of my playtesters, helping me playtest it. And after it got turned down by a couple, he's like, "Well, that's not smart. I think this is excellent. Would you consider us publishing it?" I didn't really think he was serious. And I don't know that he thought I would seriously consider it. And it actually did take Will kind of pushing both ends to point out, hey, they're serious about signing it, and pushing Bernie, like, he's serious about signing with you, right? So it kind of took that middle person to help convince both of us that we were both being serious and not just, talking. But so it was signed, I would say 3 months after 4 months after I first pitched it is when they signed it. Which to me sounds really fast, but I've had nothing else signed, so I'll say it's very fast.
I think that's really quick. I think sometimes it depends on, I think what I didn't realize and what I've learned over the last couple of years is that it can take the way some companies work is they have like an intake. It's almost like they work like a college. We have the fall intake and we're going to be signing kind of 5 games, or we're currently taking what we're going to hopefully kind of produce for 2023, 2024. So they kind of sign them in advance. And then it's not a case that it's not ready to go. Sometimes it's just like, well, we've got other projects we're kind of committing to before we kind of put them out.
I never fault a company either, because let's say they just signed another Euro, or they just signed another race game, and I'm pitching a race. They may even think my race game's better, but it doesn't matter. They just signed one, right? So there's all kinds of timey things that have nothing to do with me or my design necessarily, right? There's so many other nuances that go into this, right? I don't begrudge, right? Oh, we already have too many midweight games. We're looking for lightweight right now, or heavy, right? There's so many things that go into it that. And, a lot of publishers struggle to make good money. They need to make money to stay in business. So I don't begrudge them one iota for anything they pick. It's right. It's the nature of the beast for them.
So let's push the clock back to kind of Casio time. Let's talk about the 80s and the 90s and the noughties and stuff like that. When you were growing up, was kind of like, was tabletop a part of that? Was it something you kind of got into kind of steadily? I mean, what was your kind of journey in terms of kind of your embrace of cardboard, as they would say?
So as kids, we would play, right, the Monopoly, the Parcheesi, Sorry, right? The Trouble, where you pop the little bubble thing.
Yeah.
So we had those, and we would play them some. Right? They're great games because you'll play them, but they're not really great games, right? There's not a lot of decision space and meaningful choices. So, and then I do remember I played in high school a game of diplomacy, and I really liked diplomacy. Right. I mean,
that's a game to get into.
Well, right, but it is somewhat simple, and we had a teacher was running it, and we do an hour every week, like after class or whatever, and weeks and weeks. I don't think I've ever seen a game of diplomacy end. To be fair, right? You just everybody quits.
Yeah.
but that was different, and then. They said, well, here's another game. They gave me a game to read about, this Avalon Hill game, and I couldn't decipher it. It was way too much. And then I just stopped with games, and I board games, no more board games, for I'd say a good while, maybe in Axis and Allies once and twice in college here or there, but no real board games.
What is it you did at college?
I mean, I studied.
I'm gonna need a little bit.
Well, it failed. Studied and failed. Those two things go together, unfortunately. Not a lot of board gaming or miniature gaming or any of that stuff. That all just kind of took a break. After college, I got back into a fair amount of I'll say light miniature gaming. Mech Warrior, Mage Knight. Right, when those clicks and they had organized things, and you could go on a weeknight and do a tournament in 3 hours. I was all into that. I was doing that 3 nights a week. That was awesome.
Wow.
And then that got, they ruined that. They blew it up like people are wont to do. Right, you got something good. Let's ruin it. Sure. Which they did, and then
Were you working at that point then? Had you gone into kind of job?
Yeah. I had job at that point. And so, right, that was a different level where, right, oh, I want to buy half a case. I could do that. Like that was a whole different level of being able to game, right? Like not asking the parents for, can I have, a pack of magic cards, right? Like,
I remember Space Crusade coming out, and I remember it was like, at the time it was £25, which nowadays is like would be probably a small. It would probably be about 75 quid now, to be perfectly honest. And I begged my mother and father to kind of buy this thing out of the catalogue, because we used to have, catalogues over here. You'd have pictures and all you had at the time. It's not like nowadays where you've got kind of like reviews and videos and unboxings and everything. You had a catalogue, you had a picture at the front of the box with the kind of the figures around the bottom of it. It was just like one display, and I must have scoured that picture for the 2 or 3 months it took before the actual game. I didn't realize at the time it was like a pre-release, so I was kind of like waiting for it to arrive, and I checked like every single week for somebody to turn up with some kind of parcel for me, and it kind of took ages and ages. And like you say, you don't think any of it now. You don't think of it asking permission at that point. As soon as you start to get some money, and you're just like, oh, I'm just going to go and I'm going to drop $25 on this, and nobody can kind of stop me. So what kind of work were you doing then? What were you doing as a job?
So I work in this space industry. I work on satellites. So right, space games are natural for me.
But you gave the impression that you went to college and you said I failed.
Oh yeah.
So did you go to college and not fail?
I mean, I failed classes. I did graduate college. I certainly failed my classes here and there, right? Like no, there were some that did not turn out great whatsoever. But I once got a 6 points on a test.
That's impressive. That's pretty good.
It wasn't out of 100. It was out of 350. So that I had to drop that class. That did not go well for me. That was
what class? What class was that?
That was now this is going to sound arrogant, but it was advanced quantum mechanics. But clearly, I did not understand anything they were telling me whatsoever.
How can you fail advanced quantum mechanics? Because surely the answer kind of fluctuates. Between two kind of things, there isn't any wrong answers to advanced quantum mechanics, because eventually the answer will be there.
You would think so. I remember the test. I had 2.5 hours. It was 4 questions, right? Little question at the top of the page and the whole page, right? And I read the first question, and I cannot find the question. Like, I don't know what it's asking for. So I look for a question mark, no question mark. I look for what, show, explain, prove. Yeah. I so do not understand this topic. I don't even know what it's asking. So I say, don't freak out. Go to the second question. I can't find the question. I go to the third question. I know what the question is. I know I can't do it, but at least I know what it's asking for. That's where I got my 6 points, because I wrote a couple of things, and then I didn't know how to do it. And then I go to fourth, and there's no question. So I'm 5 minutes into this, 10 minutes into 2.5 hours, and I'm done. So I just sat there for the next 2.5 hours like, I'm going to fail this. And I just brain locked and I failed it. I completely failed that.
Wow.
That was not good.
But that obviously things must have worked out for you, because you see you're working like with satellites.
Yes. I would definitely say things worked out. But right then when I'm failing that test with a 6, it doesn't feel like things are going to work out too well.
So what do you design them, or do you monitor them? Do you make sure they continue to work? Is it,
Well, right. I've gotten old, so I've done bits of all different parts of it over the years. Yeah. Right. So I've done where you actually get to command them, right? Send commands to the satellite, monitor them. I've gotten to where we've helped to come up with the requirements for new ones, right? Building the next generation ones, right? So all different aspects of it. The only thing I haven't done, and I won't be doing, is the person actually like putting wires on the satellite. I won't ever be doing that. That's good, because I don't I wouldn't trust me with that kind of stuff, right? Actual wiring and soldering. No, don't.
Just give me the hammer. Let's just hit it.
Oh no,
we'll just hit it until it kind of works.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, don't let me near it.
Did they sort? Did I hear a story recently? Was it the Voyager? Was it one of the Voyager satellites that they kind of sent the instructions to get the receiver to point the wrong way? I don't know if they ever managed to kind of rectify that.
They did. They were able to get the loudest antenna on Earth, and they put it to max power. And they were able to yell loud enough that the satellite heard it with its antenna a little bit off. And they told it where to point, and it pointed back, and it's back. They're communicating with it again. They saved it, but they also broke it. So that's right. Like, we broke it, but we saved it. Yay! But you broke it, right? So, but whatever.
Just imagine you just see those people in the corridor and go, "Let's not speak to Kevin. Kevin messed the satellite up."
Yeah.
Imagine if you were that person that kind of like pressed that button and just
you
put that
feel
instruction through.
Oh boy, you're gonna feel awful. I mean, right?
Is that the original? Was it the original Voyager, or was it one of the newer ones?
Well, so there's Voyager 1 and Voyager 2.
Yeah.
That was Voyager 2, who's actually the further one away. Voyager 2's further. So
you could just imagine getting home, and you're arriving, and your partner just goes like, "So, how's your day? How's your day then?"
I broke an irreplaceable thing that all of mankind is nowhere close, right? They were launched in 1977, like they're the same age as me, right? They right, like we're not catching up to where it is anytime soon.
It's like what you doing? I'm just getting a taxi. We're gonna have to go after it and kind of get it back.
Yeah,
you're never ever seeing that satellite again, which sounds like absolutely wonderful. So, spinning this round as I do, has your analytical, because I'm guessing that you're not the guy that goes, right, okay, so we want this kind of silver foil here, and we want this kind of gold foil here, and we want a big nice stripe down there, and the satellite is going to look fabulous. Has your analytical, mathematical mind, has that dictated you a little bit on how you've gone down your kind of like your design journey? Because I'm guessing you're potentially not the type of guy who I'm going to get Flamecraft from. I'm not going to get cute dragons, Skippy. Well, that's what I'm not thinking.
I mean, they sell, so I hope. But to be fair, right, yeah. I generally think mechanics first. There's no way around it, right? I'm not a heavy thematic thinker first. I have tried to change that. There are times when I start going, okay, well, let me try to think about more the theme first before the mechanics, but that's not where I naturally go. But I try, and I'm trying to maybe do some design some more things not space. Most of my games start with something space. Usually it starts with I want to show and teach people this thing about space and mix it into the game. But then I've had games that have developed interestingly, but then I had to drop that thing out because it just doesn't work. Even now, the two games I've been working on the most have nothing to do with space. So I'm branching out slowly. But it's I am generally a mechanics person first, story person later.
Okay. Are there any games at the moment that are turning your head, that you're making you kind of, that you've been playing, that you've been like, oh, this is nice and exciting. I kind of like that.
Let's see. So, I have a friend and I who started on Oathsworn, so we've been playing that.
Wow, that's the big box mega story thing,
and he buys all the big box mega stories. I mean, I just helped him move into a new house. He has 100 Calyx cubes, right? He has 4 5x5.
Wow.
And all the games don't fit in it.
What's the
So
point? He's not the guy that was dealing with Voyager 2.
Well, if he was, he
What's it
definitely has
called?
no more money to buy games. But he yeah, he has a lot. So he has that, and I told him this. Have you seen this slapshot painting thing? This.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I taught him that, and now he's going to town. He's painting everything before we play against it, because right, that's a fairly fast technique.
Yeah,
And he's
it's
loving
wonderful.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it too. And so we're doing that. I'm interested to see if it gets smoother and easier. Right. One of the things I like games to do is, even if they're complex, that each time, right, I don't want to keep having to look up the rules over and over and over and over every
God,
game.
Yeah. No.
Right.
No.
So we just played Too Many Bones last night, and he wanted to do the undertow, and I said I didn't want to do undertow because I always have to look up stuff about the specials. So let's just play the regular one, and that went so much nicer because we looked up 2 things in a rule book the whole game, right? Because I'm like, I like that more when we're not just constantly having to reference stuff.
Yeah, I think that is one of my, if I'm ever gonna get attacked in the car park, is probably because I am the person that always brings the new games to the club, because I have access to new games on a kind of a regular basis. But then, like the other night I played Viticulture, and it just, you're right. I mean, when you get a game that you can just sit down, you can play, you don't even have to have the rules there, and you're just kind of getting through it, then it's such a joy. It's and you can go into the mechanics, and the mechanics are just clicking, and you kind of understand. But there's games that I've played also quite recently that they're quite new to me, that they seem to kind of like follow that. I started playing Oath, and we had our first game of Oath. And Oath, I think Oath has been built in a lot of people's heads as this huge kind of behemoth legacy type, multiple rules type thing, and it's just like, it's kind of like it's a pretty kind of fancy, kind of almost like a worker placement, card drafting, card deck handling kind of game. You play workers, you'll play down cards, and you'll try to make certain things happen within a certain set period of time that are going to suit you and have you kind of win that particular campaign. But I see what you're saying about kind of like just being able to sit down and kind of play on that. How, with regards to kind of like your design side of things, then in terms of the actual look and feel of the game, are you like kind of like lots and lots of white paper, kind of post-it notes and stickers on dice and stuff like that type of thing? How long is it before you kind of bring in the theme to kind of bring into the mechanics?
So I think it's changed over time, right? My first game I designed was all done in meat space, right? And then later put into TTS. And the second game was kind of middle. Lunar Rush was done completely in TTS, but that's also due to the time period, right? This is 2021, right? Like you're not meeting people, right? So I never had a physical version of it. It was all done in TTS. Generally, I give myself at least have an idea of, right, is this right? When I say mechanic, it's not pure mechanics, right? It's not right. I'll put, okay, it's going to be in space, or it's going to be fantasy, or it's going to be right, giant monsters. I have something to start with. I'm not just on pure mechanic size, because that doesn't help, right? Like, if you're going to make a game about smashing buildings, well, you need a reason to be doing that, right? So you gotta narrow it down a little bit in that sense, right? Right, a boss battler. Okay, well, how are we fighting the boss, right? Let's narrow this down a little bit. So I do put some of that. So there's something that starts with it, but then, right, it's I'll say it's light, right? Why are we fighting bosses? I don't know, right? We're bad guys. It's a good boss, or we're bad guys, whatever, right? I don't get into that too much. I don't build that whole story early, or you can argue much at all. I'm not big on that kind of story. I don't like writing. I don't like writing. Like rule books, I don't like writing. I don't like writing even the cell sheets. I don't like writing like this.
Is there quite a difference then between you and William in terms of imagination and stuff like that?
Oh,
because he strikes me as, he strikes me as somebody who should really consider changing their diet, considering the number of board games they seem to consume based on their YouTube thumbnails.
Yeah.
But are you kind of, as personalities, are you kind of fairly kind of diametrically opposed in terms of is he kind of the person with the flair, where you're the person that makes sure that nobody slips on the stage floor because he makes sure that the stage is kind of like properly varnished, taken care of, and looked after, kind of thing?
I mean, he's definitely the artist side of the brain. I'm definitely the math, science side of the brain. There's no way around it. That way we absolutely are, right? I never do or wanted to do, any drama, any acting, any art, anything like that. I don't do voices when I play games, right? Like, and I'm bad at it when I try. So that only adds to it. But that's exactly where he resides, 100%.
And
so
I guess I should explain the context for this, that Skippy's brother is William Brown the third, aka he's like the Hungry Gamer. He does like the Hungry reviews. He's introduced me to quite a few different kind of designers as well. So he's kind of including Seppi Yoon, which I'm not sure whether I thank him for that yet.
Yeah, Seppi's. I listened to his, and there's no way ours is going to be as interesting as his interview. That he's a very interesting fellow. The thing I'll say though is, like, Seppi is absolutely on the opposite scale of how he designs stuff, right? Like he is theme number one, and then I'm going to jam some mechanics behind it as far as I can tell. Right. Yeah. So he and I do not think the same way at all on game design and development.
But say when it comes to like designing Lunar Rush, because you were using TTS, and I'm assuming I'm not sure if it's as easy or as intuitive to kind of make. I guess it's, once you get used to it, it's fairly easy to kind of make changes to it. As you're going through it, how much was it? How much did the original design differ from what you finally kind of put on Kickstarter? Did it go through kind of like quite a few kind of iterations? Was there a point you said, right, I got to leave this alone and just let it breathe for a bit?
Not on that one. I have other games I've definitely had to let sit and breathe to come to a solution. That one, not so much. And what you have at the end is really very close to what they signed. I'll say the two biggest differences. Okay, three biggest differences. One, I designed it with 8 turns, and they went to 7, and I think they're right. I think they were right. I had on the long route, you could have 10 things, and they changed it down to 9. Now, mathematically, 10 was right, but the feel people had was it was way more valuable, even though mathematically it wasn't more valuable. So they lightened it a little bit to meet the impression people were seeing. And then we added the Moon Wonders because people were wanting something to have more of an aim in game for better replayability. So that was not something we had at all when we started the Moon Wonders. So, but that's it, right? The rest of the game stayed very, very similar.
So talk me through, because one of the things that kind of I'm fascinated by is the fact that it says it's a simultaneous play Euro style game. Now, normally I'm not used to that. What I'm used to is somebody playing like a Euro, just regardless of what it is, and everybody else kind of thinking really, really hard about what they're going to do in that turn.
Right. And the interaction between people is them taking the space you want, generally. Yeah. Right? That's the interaction.
Yeah, generally. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, right, so all of my stuff so far has some level of simultaneous play. Right. To me, that's just where games should be going. right? Like we don't have player elimination anymore, right? That's kind of a thing that's not there, and good, right? I'm like, why am I waiting 20 minutes for my go? Right? It's harder to design, but it can be designed so that, right, I don't have as much downtime, right? I don't want as much downtime, right? I want to play. So, to that point is, how do you get that interaction between players?
Yeah.
With on a Euro where you each have your own, base that you're putting your own people, without it being, I'm just playing a solo game and you happen to be playing next to me, which isn't what I want either, right? I really enjoy Hadrian's Wall, but right, when you play with another person, you're both just playing solo next to each other, right?
Yeah.
And I love Hadrian's Wall, but that's not what the experience I think most people wanted for this. So you have to have other mechanics in the game to bring that I don't want to quite say conflict, but that interaction between the players. So, right, the bidding mechanic, the taking different routes, right? Because if I take the route you wanted, that route's gone. The market, right? Those, the going after the gold modules, all that brings that interaction between the players. But then you get to sit down and do your own little bit of puzzle. You get to do your own worker placement on your own base. No one messes with you. No one mucks up your plan. You get to do that and figure out that puzzle, and then come back and then re-engage with everybody. So that's what I think makes it unique. That's what also allows it to play fast, right? It only takes about an hour to play if you know how to play, which is right unheard of for a Euro game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, even the likes of say like Wingspan, you would kind of like say, if you get through that in like less than an hour, then you're very, very kind of lucky to do that. And that's what's considered to be probably a very, very kind of almost medium entry level kind of light kind of Euro. So is it a case that when you're playing Lunar Rush, you're all working against on this one board, and then you can have a plan to say, right, I'm going to take this particular route. But then if somebody takes it, then you've got to mitigate that by taking a kind of a different thing. So did you, when you were working out in the real-time aspect, is there not risks that you could potentially stop a player from taking any kind of action on the shared board, or did you have to take that into consideration?
I absolutely took in consideration. So the two things I'll say is, if you really want something, you can bid higher to probably get it, right? So you're bidding your victory points. If it's important to you this turn, go max bid, and you'll probably win. Not often everybody's going max bid, but the flip side of it, so one of the big things I took in consideration is, I mean, not like this matters that we take a little bit of a train to get here, but Ticket to Ride, I would play Ticket to Ride online with Mrs. Hungry Gamer.
Right.
And there's a rule with her I have to keep in mind, which is she'll start building her tracks from two different sides. So I can see where she's going to need to connect.
Yeah.
If you take that spot from her, just to deny it to her, you're dead. She will not play with you anymore. If you take it to spite, now if you take it and you build from it, like you needed it for your own track, that's fine. Yeah. That's fine. You didn't deny her plan just to deny her plan. You built your own plan.
Yeah.
I keep that very much in mind on all the games, because I want to make sure that whenever I do something, right, you don't get to take that feel. It's, well, they took that, but that's probably because they wanted that. So back to the root thing, right? If I bid high, and higher than you bid, and then I take what you wanted, it's because I wanted it, not because I was denying you it, right?
Yeah.
So you get that feel of never quite to take that, well, I did it because I needed it, not because I'm denying you it. And then the other side is everybody gets two routes. So even if you get outbid or you low bid, you still get two things. And that's some of the times the best. When you see someone bid 5 and you bid a 1, so you're losing less points, and you still get the route you want because they didn't take the one you wanted. And you're like, wow, you way overpaid for that. Boy, that feels good to me. But the person who bid 5 still feels good because they got what they wanted.
They got what they wanted. So it's a case of, in the middle part, it is like a kind of an auction So it's not a case that it's like just worker placement and somebody kind of puts a worker down and goes, haha, I've got this for this one. They've actually, you go through each of the routes or whatever, and then you kind of decide via kind of almost like an auction what you're going to bid in terms of victory points, and that decides what you end up with, yeah?
Yeah, so the way it goes is the round start, you each will blind bid your victory points to decide what order you're going to pick routes in. And then you go through a round robin, so whoever wins gets to pick any of the 3 up routes or the 3 down routes. And the key with these routes is the faster they get there, the less they carry. So I can have stuff this turn to use, but only get 2. Or I can wait 3 turns and get 9. And there's a middle.
Wow.
So, but it's only 7 game turns. So waiting 3 turns is a long time. So you get to pick. And then whoever was second, whoever's third, right, assuming 3 players. And then the first who had the highest bid gets to pick again, because they're picking both the up and the down. So everybody's going to get an up and a down. It's just whether you had to pay a lot to get the one you really cared about. You may pay a little and get the one you care about.
Yeah.
Then the shifts are loaded and shifts move, so stuff arrives at the moon. And then that's where you do your individual worker placement, where you're building up your own moon base, you're putting your workers on your base, you get to do your own puzzle. And that's the simultaneous part, because everybody's doing that at the same time. And then when everybody's done, people start loading stuff to send down to Earth to sell. And then as things arrive at Earth, they go onto this market. The market is generally going down as more things show up, as markets are wont to do. And so you're trying to time that and be producing things that are going to sell for good prices to market. And that's it. Then you rinse and repeat it 7 times. So
you're kidding. That's pretty dismissive, but that sounds pretty fast. That sounds kind of fascinating. With the game not being in a kind of a physical format, how easy was it to kind of get people kind of looking at the game and playing at the game?
Oh, I mean, right, height of COVID, everybody was looking for stuff to do on TTS, right? That was fun and interesting. So that was easy, right? People weren't going out to the bars and everything else. So that went pretty fine. It's a little harder now, right? Because life's opened up. People go do vacations and everything else. But at the time, it was super easy. The only thing I'll say that was a consequence of it, and I'm not sure it could change, but it is a little bit of a table hog. And I didn't know it was going to be as much of a table hog because TTS, right? The sizes don't really mean anything on the table.
I mean, you can scroll out infinitely if you want to. I mean, you can keep on going and have something that's literally kind of like 6 or 7 feet across.
Yeah, or I make it really only be like 2 inches on the table, but because I can zoom in, it looks like it's big. So yeah, I that's the one thing I don't think we had a great appreciation till the first one was made, of just like how much space it was going to take. So it is a little bit of a table hog, but it's also right. It's not a game you're going to find in Target, so it's in the hobby space. So, So people, I think, will be prepared. Yeah,
they'll be expecting. They'll be expecting for that. When it came to kind of like TTS, and then the assets that you had for TTS, then for things like production and stuff like that, did that make that kind of easier or more straightforward to kind of produce? I mean, when the folk at Dead Alive Games were like saying, right, okay, you need to confirm all the final components, did that make it easier to kind of confirm it, send over the assets and stuff like that, or did you still have to create a physical copy to make sure that kind of like everything that was required was there before you kind of got them to produce it?
They absolutely made some physical copies, but before that, I would say TTS made it harder and then easier. It made it harder because, right, we just had infinite bags of cubes, right? Like you don't need to actually count it. TTS has such a tax on it, right? Like you don't want to have the cubes where, like, well, if you didn't put the right, people just delete the cubes, they're not putting back, right? To try to make it play closer to real time. So when you're trying to figure out how long the game takes, it's better to do that. But then when you're trying, well, how many cubes do I need? I don't know. We had an infinite bag and everybody deleted them. Right. So then, right, we had to put limits on there and see how that was working. So we would adjust that. Like, okay, well, this game I ran out of this, and this game I didn't, right? But then it slowed the game down. So, but I think a lot of us come up with a good estimate to then when they made the first prototype copies, right? We had a good estimate of how many to start with in there, and then I think there's a little bit more adjustment. But yeah, I mean, right at the beginning, it didn't help at all. Like how many cubes? I don't know, 1,000? You know, I don't know. People are throwing them away. That doesn't help.
But
right?
I can imagine that as well, because it's not one thing you think of. When you're on TTS, as you say, you got an infinite number if you need them all. But then I guess it becomes like a gameplay consideration. If I've got a maximum of 20 resource cubes that I can use, and that's as a closed economy, that can have a major effect on the gameplay. As in, if I'm only able to get 20 silver resources in the entire game, then that's going to affect kind of like what I'm going to grab and what I'm going to play.
And because of simultaneous play, you really can't do it that way. So you got to be smarter than that, right? I can't say, right, because then it would matter who is doing their moon base faster, who grabbed the stuff first, gets it. That won't work, right? That kind of defeats the purpose of the simultaneous play. So, right, to me, simultaneous play generally means you just have to think through and solve issues. They're a little bit harder to do, but they're still doable, right? So what we have in this is not only right sized it where I'm going to say 97% of the time you don't run out of a component, but if you do, right, there's a little card or a little chip to tell you that okay, I've moved my resources on here, they're worth double, so that I can return some back to supply.
Yeah.
And then by doing that, we don't have the problem. Now, again, adds a little complexity, right? But right, I've only seen it come up in 4-person games. I've only seen it come up in edge cases where people are loading a ton of this, all of it at one time. So it works. And then, of course, right, if you buy deluxe stuff, then you have even more pieces. So,
you've got everything screen printed and the acrylic tokens and module cards and all that, because that was all pretty much kind of unlocked at kind of the time. Have you got a physical copy of the game now then, Skippy?
I have a deluxe copy en route from them. Wow. I have 2 prototypes still at the house, but those are right different. The biggest thing between the prototype and the final version is they completely redid the art. Well, maybe not completely. They redid the main board art dramatically. They redid a fair amount of the other art, maybe all of it. I'm not sure. So that's I haven't seen that. Obviously, right, I haven't seen any screen printed meeples or any of the screen pieces or double layer boards or double layer ships. I haven't seen any of those in person. So
that must be so exciting, though. That must be so exciting to actually have something physically that you've created from, let's face it, absolutely nothing, to have it sitting in front of you and saying, well, it's not a case that I wanted this, but it's also a case that several other 100 other people or so kind of wanted this as well, and they'll now be kind of playing it. I mean, how does that make you feel?
That's I won't lie, that's exciting, right? Like when Will reviews it, right, and he puts all these caveats in, I still want to remind him when he says, I want to make sure my mom still likes me. It's our mom. It's not just his, to be clear. Right, or Mike Kelly, who looked at it, right? I mean, he puts in a bunch of grains of salt because I know him. But when it's not real, they're real reviewers. When it's reviewers who don't know me, that's when it's kind of exciting to hear. And then when it's real players, right? When last year at Gen Con, I was doing demos of the game, and I would not tell them I'm the designer, because to me that may change what they say. And it may change what they're thinking. So I would not say that one iota. Now, they would often at the end walk by and say, well, this was a designer, right? I'm like, I wish you would say that right now, because I want them to give me that feedback. But, right, the reviewers at arm lengths, hearing what they think is exciting. I hope one day just to see it being played in the wild, right? Like at a con or something, and I have nothing to do with it, and it's not a demo game or something else, and Dead Alive has nothing to do with it, and just hear what they say. And then if they say they hate it, I'll probably cry. But
I mean,
but there are going to be people who are going to dislike it. I gotta live with that too.
You've got to. I mean, you're gonna get your 1 out of 10 on BGG. I mean, that is definitely going to be a thing that's bound to happen. I don't know if that's happened to you so far, but it's definitely a kind of a a kind of a thing.
The one that got me on BGG was someone rated a 5 for not their theme. And my feeling was like, well, if it's not your theme and it's not out yet, I'm sure you didn't sign up to play it at a con if it's not your theme. So, which means you haven't really played this. So you just gave me a 5. Like, yeah, that's frustrating, but it's going to happen.
Right? It's just these people. Yeah, I'm looking at the Kickstarter campaign, and this is why I'm looking at the others. I've got 2 screens, and it looks like I'm like not paying attention. I'm like, I've got to balance my checkbook while we're talking. But no, but you had a lot of what you would call well-known names kind of doing the kind of the preview stuff, including Before You Play, and Grant Lyon, who apparently is very funny.
So if someone asks me what review to look at and I don't send them to Will's, I like Grant's. His was funny. I think his is real funny.
Is it kind of, when you got Will to do the kind of the preview stuff, is it kind of strange to have him kind of doing that and getting involved in the kind of the project? Or does he help because he's known in the industry, because he's known amongst the kind of the media, the content creators? Because he runs one of the board game reviewer and media groups.
Yeah, and I think Dead Alive hired him to help coordinate the media for this. So that wasn't, I mean, it's not surprising for me to hear him reviews, because I always, he doesn't always want to, but I always end up forcing him at some point to look at my stuff, because he reviews a lot of games. He's played way more games than I have, right?
No.
Because I'll sit down and design a game, he'll sit down and play a game, right? And so he gets all these games through. So I want him to look at my stuff. The 2 things I'll say is he almost never wants to give me feedback immediately. He always wants to sit on it for a day, is how he works. So I just have to accept that I get no immediate feedback.
Is that some kind of brotherly torture? That kind of
I don't think so.
By 1,000 cuts. Or...
He'll still tell me it's bad. I mean, he'll still tell me what he doesn't
make you
like.
Wait 24 hours.
It just makes me wait. But he consistently does that. So that doesn't... Yeah. Like, that's, I've gotten used to. And then it's but he has so much knowledge from having played and seen so many things. That's good. And I definitely value it, and I try to get him to do it as much as possible. Now, he's often burnt out. He doesn't want to learn anything new, because he's learning so many other new things that he's being sent for reviews. So,
and I spoke about this and the number of times that I've played a game, and then you're like, well, I'm not gonna take any pictures. I'm not gonna mention this to anybody, because you get so used to in the mindset, like back to when I was like playing Oath, and I only played Oath like, I think it was last week we played our first game, but I was playing it with Ian from the Giant Brain, and they have an excellent kind of board game news podcast, which you should check out if you haven't checked it out. And I was like, kind of like, and there was part of the way I was like, do I take photographs or not? And it's like, no, I'm not going to take any photographs, because I don't want to this is mine. This is my game. This doesn't belong to anybody else. And it sounds like I'm being like you're sounding kind of like more self-important than you are. But you're so used to kind of like playing kind of games and playing kind of, you sometimes forget that I'm actually doing this. I'm this involved in the hobby because I really, really enjoy kind of playing games in the first place. I think sometimes it's kind of, I can completely understand if Bill's saying to you, I don't want to learn another game because I'm kind of burnt out from just learning games for the sake of learning games. And also not only learning games for the sake of playing a game or learning a game, but also learning a game and looking at it through a critical eye. It's like, it's all very well, I understand this, but will somebody else get it? Did I enjoy this? Yes, but would somebody else kind of enjoy it? And you kind of get in that kind of thing as well. So I kind of get where they're coming from. But in terms of kind of like going forward for yourself, the other games that you see you've got kind of like you're in the process of kind of like developing and stuff like that, do you let, how much of a part of the kind of the design process is your brother, is he involved? Have you actually considered sitting down and saying, let's maybe do a game together, let's put a game together and see what kind of happens? Let the clash of kind of the right and the left side of the brain, let's see what happens when we put them together.
I haven't yet from that standpoint, because I'm not, I say I'm still learning the craft. Right. You need 10,000 hours to be an expert. And I think I'm still learning the craft, learning how to do collaboration. I am potentially doing a collaboration right now we're working on with a designer. He's also the publisher. So if this works, then ideally he'll publish it later. But that's my first one trying to do that collaboratively, which is, it's right. Wow. It's a whole different thing, right? Because when it's my game, I just do whatever I want, and then I can see if it works, and if it didn't work, right? This one, right? There's discussion. Well, I don't know that that's going to work. Okay, well, which ones do we push hard to try? Which ones do we modify? Right? It's a totally different space. So I think I got to get much better before I can get to that point to do something with him in that standpoint. Now, I certainly would enjoy doing something with him, no doubt about it. And he's growing in his own design level of, right, he's done several solo or AIs, and one of them, right, is getting included in the Cloma reprint. Right. Yeah. So he's growing in that skill set as well. And so that's something I'm looking forward to him as he develops that skill set more and more, right? And that's probably where it will be easiest. I'll design a game and then have him design the solo, right? That would probably be the easy. But that's a clear breakdown too of the roles.
Yeah,
right?
There's two different parts. Yeah,
two different parts.
Collaboration. Yeah,
exactly. And of course, shockingly, he's my brother. We can fight pretty well. So there can be that. So
I can imagine.
That can, right, in a way that you don't do with strangers, right? like you could yell at your brother.
I think there's always a politeness, but I think there's a kind of a thing is like I it's literally I have spent the last 30 odd years knowing how to really hurt your feelings. So it's like you're talking about 10,000 hours to be an expert. It's like I've literally got 10,000 hours of making you feel crap about being my brother. So let's not kind of do this.
Exactly.
In terms of Lunar Rush itself, you're saying it's on the boat.
It's on a boat.
Where is it going to be found? I mean, is this you're going to have? Is it going to be mostly in the United States of America, or is it is it going to be as far afield as possible? What's going to happen with it?
Well, right now it's English only. No foreign distributor has requested it yet. We're hopeful, and right. So if someone does, then it can get translated. Right. So that. But while it's in English, and right, there's text on the cards, right? It's not all symbols. Right, it's going to be UK, right? US, Canada, Australia are going to be the major places you're going to find it, simply because that's where the language is spoken. They did print some retail versions, so it hopefully will get into some shops in different places. They printed more than the backers. So they'll have deluxe versions to keep selling at cons or directly through their website.
That'd be cool.
If it goes well, right, we've already started working through what the first expansion would look like. We've done some development on that. The big thing the first expansion will do is there's, I'll say, light asymmetry you can add to the game via the faction cards, but it's a light touch. The expansion big thing is it's not a light touch. It's a full up. Everyone is totally different. Well, not totally, right? It's the same game, but works extremely different. You will know your faction is dramatically different than the others. So if this does well, hopefully we'll be able to do a reprint and do an expansion and get even more good things into it.
Cool. If resources weren't an issue, if time wasn't an issue anyway. What kind of game? What would be your kind of what would be the game that you'd be trying to develop?
Well, I haven't had to hold myself back on that because I don't think like a publisher, right? Like I have some that I would call big box, right?
Yeah.
That if someone does, right? I mean, if I had unlimited resources, it could be like Oath Sworn, right? It'd be boxes of your miniatures and big boxes of the bad guys because it's a boss battler, right? And there would be dozens and dozens of boxes to go through, and people actors reading the story on an app, right? So you don't even have to read anything, right? Like all that, right? I had that built right now. Whether anybody's ever going to accept it and publish it that way, or they publish it on the lower end, right? Who knows? But that's the advantage. Is I don't. Right, I'm not Seppi, right? Who's got to worry about turning around and publishing it, right? I'm just a designer in that sense of then the publisher has to make a lot of decisions on, okay, well, do we make this a dial? Do we make this right a dice counter? Do we make this right? I came with what I thought was the best solution from a design standpoint, but that does not equal the best solution from a publishing making money standpoint.
Yeah.
Which circles back to why I care about what they're thinking about what they're doing, so I can better make it closer, or at least understand what the trade-offs can be and help advise them, right? Oh, well, if you switch this is the consequence, but I understand, right? Cubes are cheaper than a dial or whatever it may be. But yeah, I don't have to limit myself as I design. That's just one of the things I think of as I start on the game. You have to limit yourself in some way, otherwise it's just too expansive, right? There's just too many things. So usually I'll try to limit myself on, right? It's this style of game I'm going for, which is the other thing I think I do a little bit different, right? Lunar Rush is a Euro. I have a racing game. I have a boss battler. I'm working on a basically card only game, trick taking game. Right? I don't stay in one field, right? There's some things that carry over, right? Simultaneous play, no hurt feelings when you do mess someone up, type of thing. So those are kind of consistent throughout my games. But right, you're not going to go, oh, right, it's a bag builder, worker placement game that you can associate with certain designers or anything else like that. I'm kind of all over the field, and I like that. Now that may not be the best from a getting things signed standpoint at this, but I design what I'm interested in designing, or interested in being able to play. Right, most of my things are because I see this that's interesting, but I wish it was different. I wish it was like this. I wish it went this. Right. I wish it went faster, or I wish it still had that depth but was simpler. Right, I didn't have to keep hitting the rule book. Right, or I wish I had something I could just break out at the beer hall or whatever, right? So I design for what I want to have, and then, right, hopefully other people will want to have it too.
Have you considered restricting yourself right down into say a button shy type situation where it's kind of like 18 to 20 cards, and seeing kind of what you can develop out of something like that?
Not quite like to that level. One of the ones I that's still being, I'm gonna say, it's sitting kind of fermenting right now, is one I said, okay, I want a solo game. I want it to fit right in a not much larger than a normal card box, and I want it to take up about the space of a seat next to me at the airport. Right, so
okay.
So I kind of set those limitations. Now I can break them right a little bit here or there, but that's about the space. And if I need to go another 100 cards, whatever, that doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
But that's some of the things I do to try to get myself to be able to get somewhere. And then if later I say, you know what, I needed to change this because it's not working game style, I'll do it. And I've had that. Most usually with some of the space things, like the boss battler, I had this great idea for that you would be above the ship on one board and below the ship on another board, right? Because space is really, right, you're never just on the equator of a ship. That's just kind of silly. But it just never worked. I couldn't make it work right. So right, the main thing I was starting with in the game had to get thrown out. But a good game came out of it. but the process, had to go down this route. So I don't start as hard as, but should I say 18 cards, but yeah, I'll say like a small deck, right?
Yeah.
Like the one I'm working on now, I said, okay, I want this a little bit about the speed of Scout, the complexity of Scout, a little bit more complex, about the same teach time, same table space, right? So, right, it's not Scout in any way, shape, or form, but I decided I wanted something in that game space to be able to take and play with people.
Right. And are you far along? How far along are you with that game?
That one I only started a couple of weeks ago, but man, that one is flown. That one, hey, it's simple, right? So it doesn't have as many.
Yeah.
Right. That one has flown together. I'm very excited about that one. That one, that's exciting one.
It's the creative process for a lot of things. I mean, like I have a list of stuff I've got to write up. In the middle of like, I'm writing up stuff for the magazine, I'm writing up stuff for the blog. And it's like some stuff I'll start typing, and the next thing I know, I've written 1,600 words, and it's just a dump of thought that just seems to cohesively kind of stuck together.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Other times I'm writing about a game, I'm 200 words in, and I'm just like going, I'm deleting the whole thing and starting again because it's just not working. I'm not getting the thought right.
Same thing. Some games just fly together.
Yeah.
And some games just refuse to coalesce. And I just have to put them on the back burner and let them percolate and let them simmer. And maybe I can come back to and figure it out. And maybe I can't. Lunar Rush just flew together. Right. So far, this little card game's just flying together. But the Boss Battler, it did not just fly together. It had a long and torturous, and I'll play things myself, right? I'll try to play it first. I cannot tell you at least a good 8 months. Every version I had, I went to play it myself. I'm like, I hate this game. When I hate my own game, right? Yeah. Like all these things that when I say sound are going to be fun and I'm trying to do it and it's just miserable, right? Yeah. It's that difference between the theory craft and then the trying to do it. And, it stinks after month that you just still hate your own game. But, that one just would not come together easy. So, yeah, some of them fly together, some of them don't. It doesn't mean the ones that flew together they came together easier. It doesn't mean that they're better. I'll say this, right?
No.
But it seems like they would be, but that doesn't necessarily happen.
Sometimes it's like a better victory when you've had to fight something through.
Yeah.
It's like, especially if you're trying to get like it's not an idea. It's the culmination of getting kind of like an idea, and you're like, I'm maybe not getting, I know what I kind of want to say, but I've not kind of got the right idea behind it. And it's like I'm approaching a game and I'm talking about, is this game kind of, okay, I'll give you an idea, right? I'm at the moment, I'm kind of like I'm reviewing what you would call one of those semi kind of party games that, is kind of like what you would call edgy in inverted commas. And you can approach it and say, well, I don't like this game. I don't like this game at all. It's like, it's dull. It's not exciting. It's the same thing once you've seen it kind of like five times. But my boy, he loves it. He can't get enough of it because he's like, he's just, he's not too far off being a teenager, a couple of years off. So being edgy and doing kind of crazy things is kind of like, that's fun to him. If he gets to kind of push the envelope, then that's brilliant. Me going little fart jokes, yeah, brilliant. But he's going, yeah, I can do all these different flavors kind of thing. And you kind of, so when it's like, when you go back and you're saying, well, I need to tell people how this game made me feel, it's like, I don't know if I'm going to make them tell them how I felt about it, because they'll think it's a grumpy old man shouting at clouds again. However, if I turn it from a different perspective, then people will say, well, that's, that means that other people that are similar to them are probably going to like it instead of the way that you like it instead. But it's like taking that general idea and then turning it into something, and then I'll write that and I'll go, yeah, well, this is probably more fitting than me saying, oh, this is, if you're into this sort of thing, then well done, but you're immature, nah, kind of thing. So there you go. All good fun. If people have listened along tonight and they've stayed for the Lunar Rush and they want to hear about the Boss Battler and they want to hear about all the other games that you've got out there, where do you exist on the internet web, Skippy? Where can we find you?
I really don't. I'm one of these. I'm one of these. Again, reason I want to be a good publisher or a good reviewer. I don't. Right. I do not have Facebook. I do not have all that stuff. I keep a low profile. Just.
Are you on BGG?
I am on BGG. That works as well. Right. It's funny. Several people have gone to Will to get contact info for my business thing, which is right. I'll always say, go check out The Hungry Gamer on YouTube. Yeah. And he looks at it. I look at a lot of his comments too. So you can always reach me via that and watch his stuff because he's funny. Right.
So do that. Yeah, an impromptu advert for his brother's YouTube channel. Well, go and check out the Hungry Gamer.
Yeah. Well, and that's where he puts in stuff about what's going on with me here or there. And hey, go and tell him you want more stuff about what's going on with me. Then I'll tell Mom, and then he'll have to do it.
We want a sub channel devoted to Skippy. Skippy News.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll put that link in the show notes. I'll put a disclaimer to say that I'll do that. If you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, then quite simply go to the internet webs and search for We're Not Wizards, and you'll find us in all the different places, spaces, faces, other things that rhyme with aces. I don't know, but you can find us on. Is it called? I don't know. X. I don't know. X and up and down and squirt and spacebar and plubart. And all those lovely social media places. If you like what you've listened to, go to your podcast catcher of choice and go and tell somebody else about us, because that's always nice. If you like what you've listened to, go and say, hey, you want to listen to some kind of ridiculous Scotsman trying to sound professional in his interview podcast, and go and listen to this. It's about board games. Well, it's kind of about board games. It's occasionally about board games. Sometimes they mention board games, but not all the time. Do that. And if you have liked what you've listened to tonight, or today, or tomorrow, or Wednesday, or whatever, then go to your podcast catcher of choice and drop us a rating or review. And if you are going to be giving us a rating or review, remember, and don't give us 10 stars, because it just makes me big-headed. And if my head gets any bigger, I'm just not going to have any more hair left at all. But at the same time, don't give us 1 star, because it makes us cry. I sound like Gollum when I say that. Don't give us 1 star, because it makes us cry. Give us something in the middle, like a 5, because it's average, and we're just a little bit average. But the person who's not been average, rather wonderful, rather fantastic, Mr. Skippy Brown. Thank you for guesting, Mr. Brown.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
There's only 2 more things to do. The first thing is to remember that we're many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Skippy?
Well, are we conjurers, enchanters, magicians, magus, sorcerers, warlocks, witches, diviners, fortune tellers, necromancers, or shaman? Can we be those things?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
No, then we're not wizards.
No. Betty William would have said no. I'm just saying he would have said no straight out. He wouldn't have said no. He's definitely going to say he's a wizard, isn't he? You just guarantee it. There you go.
And you do a good voice with it too.
You probably would.
Yeah.
You must not pass. And the other thing to do is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from the kind of the man who obviously went onto thesaurus.com.
I had to prep a little.
Typed in the word wizard.
That's it.
It's Skippy Brown. Say goodbye, Skippy.
Goodbye, Skippy. Thank you, Richard.
And it's goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll 6s, make something awful. Get yourself in a rush, but make sure it's a Lunar Rush. And the next time, goodbye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.